Hello Internet, Ben here with another programming video. I haven't done one of these in a long time, obviously. What I'm going to do today is make a long-term item storage feature for Poppy Seed Pets, which I think I'm just going to call the basement, at least for now. That's what it was called on SciPets. And the reason for adding it has to do with this limit, right? I've limited, it's a soft limit of 100 items that you can have in your house. When you have more than that, your pets start to act differently. It's something I might have to revisit, but the purpose of the maximum is that whenever your pets do some kind of action, it has to load up all the items in your house, consider the various combinations to see, you know, what is it my pet can do with these items, and then your pet decides what it wants to do. And that's fine, that works, but when you have multiple pets and you've been gone for many hours, when you log in, it catches up on all of them. And there, you know, you might say, well, why not have it do it in real time? I mean, there's reasons not to do that. Pros and cons. I think it would be different problems. It would solve one problem, but raise another, I think, by doing it that way. I know at least one problem. But anyway, so you log in, you've been gone for, let's say, 12 hours, so your pets each do 12-ish, probably a little more, like, let's say, 12 to 15 things each. Because again, they do a thing about every 45 to 60 minutes. So anyway, so that's a lot of work it has to do, and I'm already seeing, even with this limit in place, the soft limit in place, is that some times a user logs in and the server gives up. It says it's been 30 seconds, that's too long, I'm giving up. It should not take even 30 seconds, right? When you log in and you to play the game, it should take like 5 seconds, right, tops. So I know there's some efficiencies that I can make already. That error is coming up so infrequently. I'm not too worried about it right now, but it's certainly in the back of my mind as a thing I'm going to need to fix. Yeah, even if I can make those efficiencies, right, there's a limit somewhere. If I can make it twice as fast, well, then maybe that means you can have 200 items. I don't think it scales exactly at that rate, but that's the idea. Anyway, the idea is to have a long-term storage where you can store almost infinite items, right? Storage space is really cheap. Computing power is not. So, right, this is why Gmail gives you gigs of email space for free. Same thing. I'm happy to let you store items in your house. The inventory table, right, every row is very, very small. So really what the issue is does the item count for pets performing actions? If yes, there's got to be a pretty harsh limit, again, just for computing time. And if no, if it doesn't need to be considered by pets at all for anything, then fine, we can have almost as many as we want. So I think what I'm going to do is have it unlocked. So, you know, players unlock these different features by taking certain actions or just because enough time has passed or whatever. There's all kinds of different unlocking conditions. So I think that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with just the basic UI to add the link on the right here, right in this menu, or I say right, it could be the left if you pull out that way. I'm doing like I'm on phone view mode, as you can see, so I'm simulating it like as if we were on a phone. I like to develop that way. It's supposed to work on phones, mobile first development, right? But anyway, you can do a drag with your finger, or in this case the mouse, to choose the side. I don't know if many people know about that. It doesn't matter. You can also just click up here. Anyway, so this is the place where I'm going to add it. For now, for the purposes of this video, I think I've got like about half an hour before I have a Skype call with like a professional game developer friend, Steven, who I always like to talk about because he's a super smart guy. I'm going to actually ask him some game dev questions that have come up on the Poppy Seed Pets Discord. But anyway, until then, I'm not going to worry about adding the unlocking logic. I'm just going to add the column, excuse me, like burping here. I had lunch, not whatever. So I'm going to add the column, just set my account to be unlocked true, and then get that menu working, and then start coding as much of the backend as possible. And I'll use Insomnia. I've kind of showed this tool before. There's also Postman. They're both pretty popular. I think Postman actually might be a little more popular, but anyway, use that to test the API and do all that stuff. But anyway, let's make the front end first. And by first, I mean let's make the back end update first, actually, to add that new column. So the API, this is all Symfony stuff I've kind of mentioned before, but in case you haven't watched before, I'm using a thing called Symfony. It runs on PHP in the back end to handle that's where all the data is. That's what talks to the database. It's really the logic, the business logic of the application, the game, Poppyseed Pets, and then Angular is on the front end. So I have them here on my machine as Poppyseed Pets app, which is the front end that you see on your phone or web browser, and then API is the back end that we can interact with here. But anyway, so it has these built-in features to update new things in the database. So in this case, I want to add a new field to user. I want to call it unlocked basement. Unlocked basement. It is going to be Boolean, and it can't be null. And then we're done. And it makes it great. And then we make a migration. So the way that this is done, just to kind of, again, I don't know how much coding you know or you want to know. I'm going to assume you want to know a little if you're watching this video. The idea here is, yes, I could go in here and add a new column, right? I could click add a column and do this in the database. The reason you don't want to do that is because how will that change? This is my local copy of the database. I'm going to want this out on the live site. How do I track the changes that I've made to the database reliably without having to memorize it in my brain or write it down or do something horrible like that? You want all your changes to be in code. And the reason you want them in code is that you can put them in code repositories, which is especially useful if you're working with other people. But even just for myself, sometimes I'm on my laptop in a cafe, sometimes I'm at home. Sometimes I'm logged into the production server, the thing that you guys actually play on. I want to make sure the code is shared between all those locations, including database changes. So this is where migrations come in, and I will find the migration to show you. Sorry, I've got to two monitors, so if you see my mouse fly off to the left here, it's going onto the other monitor where recording is happening. Okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's find the migration. So here's the new one, and it's always good to confirm. Sometimes there might be more changes than you remembered, or you forgot to run a migration, and then you end up with tons of extra stuff in here that you didn't want. Also, I forget, I can press Control here to do a nice thing with the cursor that might help you locate my mouse. I'll try to remember to do that more. But anyway, so this is good. It alters the user table, adds the unlocked basement thing. I asked for Boolean. That's implemented as a tiny integer. That's fine. I don't care about those details, right? I asked for a Boolean. The rest of the code's going to treat it as a Boolean. This is like, oh, MySQL, who cares? I mean, you should care. You need to know MySQL, but for most purposes, don't care. I like to organize these. I have so many migrations. They used to all just be in one folder. Symfony by default just throws them all in this migrations folder. I've been organizing them so that it's not this huge list every time, because every time I come and scroll down, where's the new migration? Here it is at the bottom. So it has helped me to have these folders. Anyway, new migration looks great. Now that I know it's great, and they kind of tell you this as you ran. You may have read this, right? It says, next, review the new migration. Yes, thank you, I've done that. Then run the migration, and that's what we're going to do. And running the migration is what actually puts it into the database. It will actually make the change in the database. And that's part of my deployment process to get the changes up to the live server. And then that's also what I do, again, when I hop on my laptop and work out of Barnes & Noble or whatever. Because there's one of those kind of nearby, and I used to work there, so it's just a familiar space many years ago. But there's still people I know who are still working there. That's such an interesting thing. Anyway, this is now in the database. I'm clicking frantically trying to find. Here it is. So we now see, here's the unlocked basement. Don't know why. Oh, because it is supposed to be a date time. I'm a crazy fool. Did you notice that? And we're getting angry at me. So fine. Now we get to see a new fun thing. We're going to think you can do migrate down. There's a way to do this. Migrations run down. I always forget how to do this backwards. Execute. I think it's execute down. We just want to go down one. We have to specify a version. You know what? I don't want to, but I should to show you guys the right way. Because I'm like, screw it. I'm going to do it manually. And the manual way would be like, delete this column, take the migration version out of my database. I'm going to do that anyway, even though I said it's maybe not the right way. Sometimes you get yourself in trouble and you need to know how to do this anyway, so that will be my defense for doing this the wrong way. So my migration is bad, and to make sure my database isn't in a weird way, I need to delete that migration. Haven't committed it yet to source control, so this is all safe to do. That thing I just said may or may not have made sense to you. Let's delete this migration. This is the table that Doctrine keeps to see which migrations have I run, and that's how it knows when I run on my laptop. Oh, that migration hasn't been run. I need to run it. Whatever. This is the table it uses to keep track. So I'm unrunning this migration manually. which would be harder in some situations, but here it's fine. And sorry, I'm sorry, it's like talking and clicking at the same time apparently doesn't work. Let's get rid of that one, and then let's now make the new migration again, or update the user entity. Oh, that's the other reason maybe. Well, no, unrunning the migration wouldn't have done that. But I need to come in here now and change this unlocked. Here it is, unlocked basement. We're going to do this. I want this to be the thing anyway. It should be a date time. So when you run that command I did of make entity, it's making all the code in here. And that's where I was saying before, you know, I asked for a Boolean, it made an int. And I don't care because the code I mentioned is going to treat it like a Boolean. And this is where that's all happening. For every table, you have one of these entity classes. That's where all the kind of the logic of dealing with the database is. So if we go down here, it's going to say, oh, unlocked basement returns a Boolean. Well, now it doesn't. Now it returns a date time immutable. It is actually nullable. You use that to mean that it's nullable. Nullable meaning that it either has to contain date time or the value null, which is like a special thing can happen. Okay. Nullable is true. Great. And that would be the initial value. Okay, let's make a migration out of this. So I made the field by hand, right? You could do that. You could come in here and you can make all your fields by hand. Make these getters and setters by hand from scratch. It's a pain to do it that way. So we use these cool, helpful tools of like make entity to do it. Do it for us. So let's make a migration again. And especially now that I did stuff by hand, right? It's like, oh, the migration could totally be wrong. I did it by hand. Humans are bad at things. That's why we use the command line tools. But anyway, add a unlocked basement is the date time, which it's supposed to be. Great. I'm glad that PHP my admin happens to do that little squiggly underline thing it did, right? Oh, got to run the migration now that we saw it's right. Doctrine migrations migrate. And it used to be Booleans, and that's still stuck in my head. That's why I made that mistake. Because brains are bad. I started these off just being like, did you unlock it, yes or no? And then I realized I wanted to have it be a timestamp. Just to, I mean, I think eventually I'll let players see that, but it was mainly for doing that little new flag that shows up. Like when you newly unlock something, there'll be a little angled thing in the corner that's like, new. What's happening? Also, I'm trying to press, there we go, control. There will be like a little new triangle, red, and, you know, like some sort of badge or ribbon to say the thing is new, and that's based on the time. How long have you had it unlocked, right? But I think it would be interesting, and it's interesting for me too, potentially, just on the back end to see about how long does it take people on average to unlock the basement, right? I could compare that to their registered time and figure that kind of thing out. So I haven't done any kind of analysis like that, but that could be really useful for me if I was, you know, if there's a feature that I'm in my mind, I'm like, the park, right? I want as many people in the park kind of as possible, but I also just don't want any new account with pets that aren't, you know, there's some sort of requirement, but if I feel it's essential and I take an average and it's taking people like a month to unlock the park, that would be really good to know. It shouldn't take you a month. It should take maybe a week or something, right? Probably even less than that. So a date is useful for that as well, but mainly I did it for UI purposes. So anyway, we've got the unlocked basement in here. I'm being very careful not to browse this table. This is a dump of the database I took. They call it, because the program is called MySQL dump, but I took a dump, which always is because then you're saying, I took a dump of the database, guys, from the production into here. So if I hit browse, you're going to see like everyone's email addresses. Passwords you wouldn't see. Those are crazy encrypted. But I don't want to show, you know, like here, you can see my encrypted password, have fun. I'm actually going to see it in plain text before long because I've made sure to change it on my local copy, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, I want to set my unlocked basement to be now, which is a little awkward to do with this interface. Be the current date, that's fine. I don't have to be specific to the minute. So as long as it was flagged today, I think that'll be fine. And I just want that there so that the next thing I'm going to code now, finally, is showing that menu on the right if you have, or again on the left if you have it unlocked. So let's add that part now. Now that I've had fun making it more difficult than it should have been to add a new column to the database. So let's find the menu, leave nav. Yeah, you can see there's so many components already. This thing is getting bigger and bigger. App menu, apparently. Okay, so here we go. So We'll want a new thing that says basement. Basement is new, and this is the thing that decides whether or not it's going to add that little ribbon, as I mentioned, and we should see that. So if you've, we're going to need to change something else. So I've kind of talked about this before in previous videos, so whoops, I've done something horrible. Put that back. What was that, Control-Shift-1? I can never remember. Nope, that's bookmark. Get that bookmark out of here. There's some way to view that. Alt-1, I always forget. All right, we want the user thing. So the only columns returned by the API when you ask the API are ones that are marked with this group, and there's a whole thing about serialization groups, whatever. I can get into that some other time. And again, I already have. So I have added unlocked basement as a new thing that will be returned. So that needs to go in the model class here as well. It doesn't need to. TypeScript, which is what I'm using to do the front end, I guess you'd call it a superset of JavaScript. It compiles into JavaScript because browsers don't understand TypeScript, but they understand JavaScript. You've probably heard of JavaScript. These interfaces end up going away entirely. Like, they're completely optional, but I add them for the help from the IDE. I mean, those sorts of things where it's like, oh, that thing was underlined wrong. That tells me I've done the wrong field type, right? All those kinds of visual indicators are super helpful to prevent yourself from making mistakes, right? Help me then. So doing that here is same idea. It's going to let the IDE color things if I've done things wrong in all kinds of ways. Even more helpful than that MySQL thing. So anyway, I need a unlocked basement. It is a string or null because date objects come over through JSON as strings. The JSON format, which is used to do a lot of communication between all sorts of modern apps, Poppy Pets included, doesn't have a native format for date objects. You just pass them as strings or numbers. It's kind of up to you. So I'm doing them as strings. So here they are. It's a string or null, as mentioned. Unlock greenhouse, and we have to turn it into, we say make a new date. Out of that string, get its time. Was it at least 4,000 minutes? Is that what I'm seeing here? Or it's 4 hours, but it does microseconds. JavaScript keeps time in microseconds, not seconds. You got to multiply everything by 1,000. So I believe this is for 4 hours. You're going to see the thing look new. This is only setting this one variable. This variable on itself, on its own does nothing. I actually need to make use of it here. So I think that should probably go near the greenhouse. So we'll say if the user has unlocked, and this is where that type, right? This is the sort of help I want. Basement, great. I can't typo it. It's there for me. We'll make it go to the basement URL. Doesn't exist yet. Neither does this icon. I'll make that as well. And then we'll label it basement. And then we have this little badge class new. And we only want that if basement is new. All right, so let's take a look at the Poppy Seed Pets. So it shouldn't be new, actually. We saw it was only 4 hours. It's noon here, which is like 16 o'clock UTC, right? And the date in the database here was much later. But let's go ahead and make this be a 16 o'clock UTC. Did that do it? No, it doesn't like when I do that. It wants me to edit it here. Fine. 16, 17. Well, that's a little weird to put it in the future, although it should technically still work. Let's see if that puts in the thing. Assuming I can do UTC in my head properly. I guess I can, right? 12, which is 12, but it's plus 4. I'm 4 off, so it should be 16, and it is the 14th. I don't know where my little new thing went. I'm going to assume it works in real life. I'll double check the math. So basement is new. If the user unlocked the basement, it should be true. Although I have unlocked the greenhouse, so that wouldn't have been the problem here. Didn't I? Am I crazy? I thought I already did this. All right, let's see what that looks like. Reloads. It reloads on its own. I didn't have to press F5. I was about to. Great, now it's new because it was unlocked, it thinks, like 40 minutes ago, right? 12:41. My mouse is over here. Okay, and again, as I mentioned, clicking on this will actually take us nowhere. That URL doesn't exist. Let's start making that URL. So I have, and I think I've done this before, I put all the pages, Angular doesn't require you to do this, but I put all the page components into this page directory, folder, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to make one of those. You got to go back to the app, and it has its own thing. Again, you could make these by hand. I'll show you one of them. They consist of 3 files, 4 if you're doing testing. I'm not, because I'm a bad, lazy developer. It's a project for home, I don't care. Although arguably I should. I just need to take the time. But anyway, yeah, you can make this by hand, is what I was saying, right? Same thing, it's troublesome. There's a lot to do. You have to remember to do it. You got to put things here, you got to put things there, whatever. There's a lot of work. The developers of Angular, originally Google, know that, so they made these wonderful tools to help you do it. So I'm going to make a new component. I'm going to put it in the page directory, and I'm going to call it basement. And we will see it appear here. Cannot be run outside of a project. You're probably right about that. The new command, I'm sorry, it's not, N is for new project. I want G for generate component, whatever. Okay, now it made it. And usually, oh, it popped in. I happen to see it. Usually I have to tell PHP Storm, oh, there's changes, you're not aware of them yet. I mean, it's polling every now and again. I must have happened to get those files in just before one of its polling intervals or something. I don't know exactly how it's listening. I know there's ways to do it more live. I really don't know the method they're using. But anyway, here's my basement thing. As mentioned, we have this test. I'm not going to maintain it, so I'm just going to delete it because it's not going to be up to date. Okay, I was like, that looks like more content than should be there because I had it selected and was seeing something else. I was seeing a different file. So here's our empty basement component. I'm going to remove this selector. What the selector lets you do is go into the code and say, like whatever that selector was, you'd put in here. So I could say like basement thing. The reason I'm removing it is it's a page. I'm never going to put a page somewhere else. If I was going to do that for reasons, I would like break it out into multiple components. So I'm just, again, kind of protecting myself from the possibility of accidentally doing that by just removing it entirely as an option. I don't ever want to put it, like I don't want the whole basement page embedded in some of like a pop-up dialog. And if I did want parts of the basement or even the whole basement, I would make a different component for that purpose. But the pages are pages, and I'm trying to keep them clean like that. Separation of concerns, kind of. It's not really what that is. But anyway, we have the basement page. It's not going to do anything, of course. But the final thing I need to do for it to be visible is to hook it up. Here's a list of all the URLs and what they do. This project is getting to a size, maybe I'll do a whole video about this, where I'm going to want to split things into multiple modules. That is a thing, at least for me learning Angular, where I looked at that and went, oh no, that's a whole new thing I have to learn. What a pain, how difficult. It's not really that difficult. I mean, everything is difficult until you've done it and you know how it's done, right? So that might be an interesting thing to show. If you've like been learning Angular at all, you may have run into the thing about modules and looked at that and had the same thought I did, right? So it might be helpful to see how someone else splits up modules, especially for an existing project. It's always easy to do from the beginning. But in reality, you don't know in advance how things are gonna, I mean, you might, right? There are some guesses I could have made, like, I don't know, all these help pages probably, they're not used, most people aren't looking at the help pages. I can split those off into different modules so that they would be lazy loaded later instead of being loaded up front, right? And that's definitely one of the things I would split up into a different module for faster loading. That's what it's about. Yeah, same for all the house add-ons, right? If you don't have a basement for a long time, why make a new player wait for the website to load to the basement? And you know, it's not that long, but when it becomes over the course of the game, you know, it's like 100 add-ons you can have, and the help section gets huge, right? Like all that stuff just adds up over time. So you want to do those splits. But anyway, don't have to worry about that right now. I'm just going to copy the greenhouse again as a model because it's very similar. But we want to make sure that the basement is the URL, and we also want to make sure to use the basement component. There we go. I didn't just want to type it in, I wanted to type it there with the autocomplete, because when you do autocomplete, you may have noticed, it also added a line here. For TypeScript, you have to do these import things. If you've used Java or C# or some of those other languages, you're familiar with this stuff. It's always on the top of your files, it gets really big. Old school programmers get angry about it, but it's fine. Because look, it's fine. And it makes the other things go nice and efficient. And we want a different guard here, so I'm gonna make, I forgot about that part. But that is what these guards are for, is so that on the front end we can say, hey, the user isn't allowed to access this URL. Because it's the front end, it'd be very easy to hack around if you wanted to. It's really just there for basic like sanity checks. It's almost more for me than it is for you, right? Like if you want to hack around it, fine. there's going to be actual protections in the API that you can't hack around. But this is just for, yeah, again, more my sake of keeping things sane and basic logic. It's helpful for testing the front end too. Like, you shouldn't see it, so we want to make sure you can't, because otherwise things just get confusing for users or for testers or whatever. It's a sanity check for everyone. So I don't think I've explained that in the best way possible. But anyway, let's copy an existing one. I'm not going to generate these. They don't need to be registered in the same way as other components, so I'm just going to make it by hand. So we're going to call it must have unlocked basement. And you must have unlocked the basement. And that's really all it needs to be. There might be a way to abstract this out better, honestly, to, yeah, I don't know what it would be, but because all of these things are only checked, right? They're all identical except that they've got a different name and they're checking for a different parameter. I could probably use like a function to generate one of these or something. I don't know if that would play well with Angular, but I can start to imagine ways to do that. I kind of don't care. Maybe I should, I don't know. Again, if I get like 100 of these in the long run, maybe I'll be forced to care. So we must have unlocked the basement. Same thing, let it autocomplete because then it adds the import statement for me and I don't have to worry about it. Great. So let's see, all those things should be working. If I find the web browser, sorry, again, I'm clicking it. I could click down here too. I've also got the tabs down here. But so let's see. So it should let me in and it should look very boring, the basement page. What are we on right now? What's happening here? We're getting errors. I've done something badly. Service workers, that's fine. Null injector must have unlocked basement guard. Ah, I forgot to register it somewhere else. There is something else I have to do with it. I need to put it down here. Must have unlocked. Was that it up there after all? It was. And the error, maybe I should show you, although it's about to go away. Sorry. It's useful to see, like, what error did I see and what tipped me off to the fact that that was what the problem was. It's just the experience of having seen it before and being confused and looking it up. But if you add a guard and you start getting weird problems, it's because I have it in another module is what's going on. The routing, at least, is separated out into another module, which is actually, I don't know why. That's like how Angular sets it up by default, but you're going to have to load the routing when you first download the app, so there's no savings there. It might just be a packaging thing for developer sanity. But we should be able to go to the basement. It's not going to display even remotely right. I will fix that up real quick to show you. I mean, I'm going to need to do it anyway, but all of my pages have this main component, and again, this is probably something I could start to abstract. Because I am being so strict about how pages are, I might be able to override something, like make an abstract class or something, I don't know. Haven't done that yet, don't know if I ever will. But this main tag is specially styled to like avoid hiding behind the, yeah, here we go, it says bookstore, which is incorrect, it should say basement. But anyway, it's got the styling right, so that it looks good. And I don't know if you're wondering about that, right? The edge of the background is mainly for people on desktop. I keep a sort of width. I mean, I don't know, that's a thing I go back and forth on, but in general for reading, it's nice if lines are of limited length, so I just don't let it take the full width of the display, but like, honestly, it can get pretty full, right? Like, I mean, that would be a lot to read. So anyway, let me get all my little tools back, put it back in phone mode, rotate that phone. Okay, so here's the basement. Obviously it doesn't do anything, so the next thing would be to code up the API backend. I think I'm going to cut this video off here, and then, because I'm going to have, again, that Skype. Oh no, I didn't mention that. I mentioned it. I tried to record this video once and then screwed up like 5 minutes through and had to restart. But I'm going to get on Skype with my professional game developer friend. He makes games for Amazon. We just haven't talked in a long time, so we're going to talk on Skype, and I'm going to ask him actually a question that some players had on the Poppy Seed Pets Discord about actually this basement feature. So just to kind of get his take on how it might affect the economy, if he thinks it does, if he knows examples from other games. You know, there might be something to learn there. I don't think anything that's going to change my mind, make me go, well, no basement then, but I don't know, it'll be interesting. I don't know what I don't know, so I'll talk to him. But anyway, so I'm going to stop recording now. I'm going to have that chat with Steven. probably talk a little about that in the next video, which I'll start recording immediately after that, and then start doing the back end for what we've seen here, setting up this front end. And that will be getting into using Insomnia to kind of test it out and see that things work, and then coding it, the actual UI here, so that you can see items and all that stuff. Hopefully I'll be able to reuse a lot of logic from the house, which might also get into some interesting component reuse and stuff. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this is all interesting, of course. If you have any thoughts about these videos or questions about Poppy Seed Pets or anything like that, you know, throw them in the comments. I'll also have links to the, I've got like a feedback form that is being used by players of the game as well. So I'll put a link to that. And if you want to post a thing there, do it. Anyway, thanks again, and goodbye.